Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR to sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. Rudo, AJ, and Jesse coming to you live. Did you know you can get a ride on the party bus on December 17th for just $25? If you already have a ticket to the game, you can come join us. You can come party with us. It includes a ride to and from the arena, and it includes free beer. So it's literally cheaper than parking at the arena yourself and getting beer. So jump on it. If you got ticket to December 17th game against Nashville, you want to party with us, go check out the party bus. Links to the DNVR locker will get you to those tickets. Been a good couple of days on the injury front for the Avalanche. Jesse, I saw you went for it, officially tweeting out the 6th day without an injury. Yep.
I'm jumping the gun a little bit because we didn't get an update on LOC today with an off day for the Avs, but he finished the game. We're going to go ahead and assume that we can now make it 6 days without an injury. But that may have to be reset when we check in with the team tomorrow.
We'll see what happens officially. We do have...
I mean, a 6 is just a 0 with a hook.
Well, not wrong.
It'll be easy to update if we need to.
Yeah, a little eraser.
Make a couple more days and you just have 2 zeros with an 8, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'll just stack 2 zeros like one on top of each other. So from a distance, it looks like an 8. But if we need to make any quick adjustments...
Is that why Andreas Englund is so terrible? It's because it's just a bunch of zeros stacked on each other?
It's like, yeah, in case you need to just wipe him to a 0.
Well, relevant. He was reassigned to the Eagles alongside Ben Myers after the game last night. Don't know how permanent that will necessarily be, but indications are the Avs are getting healthier and healthier here. Evan Rodriguez seen skating in a normal jersey by himself today, but nonetheless skating in a normal jersey. Lots of positive news coming in on that front for the Avs. So we decided we're going to do everyone's favorite thing of all time and just spend this whole show roster baiting and how the Avs lineup might look, because I do think this is an interesting conversation, right? You're starting to get these guys back, but you're still a couple weeks away from getting McKinnon back. You're still probably at least a month, if not more, from really getting Landeskog back. So they're going to have to do some weird balancing stuff.
I want to make one quick comment on Landeskog because there's been the reports out there that he's skating. And while that is, yes, technically true, he was at Ball Arena, I was at Ball Arena real early last week ahead of practice, and Gabe Landeskog was out there. That is true. I don't fully know if I would describe what he was doing as skating. We saw this last year. Look, he's on his skates, but you can tell that he's being instructed, like, really don't take any like real strides. They're real small little movements, moving around the ice, kind of shooting pucks, flipping pucks around. He's not skating.
It's like the very first step of the process
right.
of him getting back into the kind of conditioning that he's going to need because it's a lower body injury. This is like the very, very beginning of that process.
Yep.
There's no updated timeline. It's still late January.
Yep. Yeah, this is, and again, like we saw him do this last year before the playoffs. And what AJ said just now is completely correct. This is get the feel back. Get what it feels like to be on your skates. Start, you're adding just a teeny tiny bit of motion and it will gradually ramp up. Seriously, we're talking over the next month to 6 weeks, at least, of a ramp up process here. So while a lot of these guys are getting back on the ice, you will see out there that Gabe Landeskog's on the ice. While that's technically true, I just want to make sure that expectation is still clear amongst Avs fans that you are still looking probably at minimum 4 to 6 weeks on Gabe Landeskog right now.
To be honest with you, if you expect him back before the All-Star break, you're being optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no reason, knowing that his timeline is mid to late January anyway, there's no reason to think that he would be back before that huge gap of time. Like, what's he going to do? Play one game and then they go on the bye week for 10? Like, just give him the extra week week and a half of rest. Like, the smartest thing to do is to expect him to be back when the team comes back in February.
He is the one guy, excuse me, even with all these injuries, they aren't going to rush. We talked last week about maybe there's some of these guys that they will, I don't necessarily even want to use the word rush, but be a little bit quicker to get him back just with all the injuries. Gabe Landeskog, given the fact that he had to have kind of unexpected do-over surgery, they're not going to rush him. He's going to take whatever time he needs.
Yeah, for sure. And being realistic, I don't think there's any reason to rush him. Certainly, if you make an argument, there's not a reason to rush anybody with how the Avs have looked over these past couple games now that they've gotten Val and Lehkonen back. It wasn't the best hockey game in the world the other night, no, but it was certainly good enough.
Yeah.
So something you can live with.
AJ, I just want to get your take on it because we talked about it a good amount yesterday on the show, and Megan and I have talked about it in a couple of videos over the last week. How big of a difference did it make to you, AJ, just purely having those guys back, even though they're not, your Nathan McKinnons and whatever, purely just inserting those guys back in the lineup, what a difference it made in terms of bumping everyone down? I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on it.
I mean, it's not even just bumping a guy down, right? I mean, you're talking, you straight up go from Jason Megna to Val Nichushkin. And then you do bump a guy. The guys that are down there, you do bump, or the guys that stay there, you bump down. Like, it's a huge difference in terms of you have a high end NHL player, a higher end NHL player, and a guy like Nichushkin, and a very good, like, top 6-ish somewhere in Arturi Lehkonen. I mean, just those two guys. We saw yesterday in St. Louis. St. Louis's one strength, their greatest strength, is forward depth.
Mm-hmm.
They've got different waves of lines that they can throw at you. Well, the Avs have one line defensively that they've been able to rely upon all season with Cogliano, Comfer, and LOC, where bad things don't happen to you with that line out there. I think they've only been on the ice for 5 even strength goals against all season. So you're talking, and that's a line that's been together from the start. So you get that line. They found some weird magic with Charles Hudon and Jean-Luc Foudy and Ben Myers. That trio just worked in 2 games. It held its own. It was fine. It was competitive. But having a top line that could function as a top line, because Lehkonen, Rantanen, and Nichushkin, those guys, with like Newhook was like sort of part of that mix at different times. Like, Newhook's role yesterday was downright bizarre. But like that trio right there, at any given time, they could just throw out a top line, an actual bona fide NHL top. Not like Mikko Rantanen is a stud, and Alex Newhook is a young guy that we like, and then there's Charles Hudon on the other side, where you're like, like they could just throw out a bona fide, hey, here's a top line. Like, this is a group that we can go to battle with, and it just makes your team. It changes the complete dynamic of your team, that you're in the offensive zone, that you're forcing a team to defend, that you're creating dangerous chances, that you're playing in the right zone, that you're actually putting pressure on the other team. And I know they got 3 goals yesterday. Offense is still a problem here. Like, we got to be realistic. Mikko Rantanen has 5 of the last 6 Avalanche goals, but that's at least something to start with. You have a top line that can function, and we see in this league all the time that more often than not, especially in the regular season, your best players are what separates you in winning and losing games.
Go ahead, Rudy.
I do want to extrapolate this into the second line as we go through this show. Again, we're assuming Erod should be back. Could be as soon as tomorrow, but certainly sometime in the next week or so. He probably slots right into your second line pretty easily. What does that rest of the top six start to look like then? Are you keeping Hudon up there? Are you running Newhook on the wing on that line? How does it shake out?
I mean, it's hard because AJ alluded to something that we kind of talked about last night with that trio of Hudon, Foudy, and Myers, that they've had them together for 2 games, and for 2 games, it's looked, for all intents and purposes, looked pretty good, right? Yep. And given everything that this team has been dealing with recently, in terms of inconsistencies in the lineup, I don't know. If you're Jared Bednar, do you like the idea of keeping that group together as much as possible, kind of the way he's done with Comfer, Cogliano, and O'Connor? So, yeah, so you got Newhook, Rodriguez,
Foudy. Well, he'd be with the other line.
Does that leave you with like Dryden, Hunt?
Bleed or Hunt, yeah.
Right.
And that's why I think the answer is no.
Yeah,
right.
That line doesn't stick together, because I think that if Rodriguez does, whenever Rodriguez does come back, he was the bridge to secondary scoring for them. Mm-hmm. He was playing so well. And look, Alex Newhook's a little all over the place right now, in terms of his role and, to be honest, his play. But he's putting up points for you. And
the role and play thing might go hand in hand a little bit.
Well, I do too, but I think what we're seeing though is that he's the trial by fire here. He's learning how to be an impact guy and how to be effective all over the lineup. Not just in a set and like, okay, he's your third line left wing and like, okay, that's it. Like, he's been moved all over the place and he just keeps popping up. He's one of the few guys that's giving them any kind of offensive punch outside. I mean, pick all these other guys. Everybody loves Foudy. Everybody loves this guy. Charles Hudon. And
we'll get to him.
All this stuff, right? But Alex Newhook's the one that's actually produced points. He's the one that's actually on the scoreboard. He's in your box score more often right now, more often than not ish. But it's like every other game, which is right where you kind of wanted him to be this year. So he had a really slow start to the year, but since the 8 games where he started the year scoreless, he has produced like a low second line player. And that guy next to Evan Rodriguez, and then with another guy, we saw Martin Kaut looked pretty good in that role. All right, let's see what Jean-Luc Foudy does next to those cats.
If you remove those 8 games for Newhook, which I get it, like removing the part he's bad at is cheating, but humor me for a second. It's been 11 points in 18 games.
Right. I mean, and that's secondary scoring, baby.
Yep.
That's what you want.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and so it's funny because like as I was kind of sitting there talking through that second line, I was like, yeah, I don't think you can keep that group together. And then you said it, AJ, like unless you are going to want to call up, unless you think that Alex Galchenyuk has made some like meaningful steps in the last week, I mean, I don't know. Then you split that line up, knowing that if you want to throw them back together, you can. I really do. I think the other part to this, and Rudo, if you want to wait on this part, like I also don't think we're that far out from getting Darren Helm back.
Yep.
From the Avs getting Darren Helm back. And so that's another thing to keep in mind, that, if you can get those two back within a game or two of each other, and maybe you are comfortable leaving that Foudy, Hudon, Myers line together as a bottom 6 group, and you plug in Darren Helm, somewhere on that, maybe back with that third line. Take Comfer off there and get back what was your fourth line from last year. You can bump Comfer up, Newhook, Comfer, Rodriguez. You have a lot of center options there.
You have like a lot of bad center options.
Right. You have a bunch of guys who are better suited elsewhere, but can play center.
A bunch of dudes who can take face-offs, but their actual being a center is, we'll see.
A bunch of
Right.
dudes that can lose faceoffs.
Comfort does okay.
He's you know where he is on the year?
It was like 52 or something.
47, man.
Oh, is it that bad?
Really?
Damn. All right. None of them can take
Because
face-offs.
That's the
That's
thing, though, is that
surprising.
he gets hot and he'll win 20 of 26 in one game,
Right.
and then he'll go 3 games
Yeah.
in a row where he's at like
That
46%.
the thing
Well,
just bounces up and down like a pinball. Yeah.
He got him and Duchesne, I remember, would work on face-offs like endlessly after practice. And so if you watch him and if you watch him and the way that Matt Duchesne both take face-offs, it's very similar. But I think Duchesne has kind of settled in a little bit more consistently to being like a pretty top-tier face-off guy.
Yeah. For the record, Confer's only been over 50% once in his career. It was last year, and it was 51.
So good relatively to the Avs, maybe.
Yeah, relative to like Nathan McKinnon in his career, 43% or whatever. He's doing fine, like he's your guy, but there's a reason that there's a reason that the Avs are brutal in the face-off circle because they don't have anybody that's consistently good at it.
Except for Landy.
Yeah. I do want to extrapolate on the Helm conversation, not just himself, but who is on the chopping block to get sent back to the Eagles there. But first, we are brought to you by Athletic Greens. You start every day with just 1 scoop in your cup of water. It's got 75 different vitamins and minerals, a bunch of adaptogens and electrolytes in it to get you going, help boost your immune system. Tons of athletes use it as part of their daily workout routines. So if you want to get a little bit healthier, it can help with that. Around the office at DNVR, a lot of us use it as a hangover cure. Not too bad for that type of thing as well. So
Anna did that yesterday.
definitely a great little wonder thing to get your days started on the right foot. Put it that way. You can get it at athleticgreens.com/avalanche so let them know we sent you over there. And when you order, you get 5 free travel packs. So even if you're getting drunk on the road, you can take it with you. Don't drink and drive. I meant like when you're traveling and getting drunk. Also, you can get a year's supply of vitamin D when you order. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/avalanche to take control of your health, especially with all the flu season going around. I know AJ's still recovering from his sickness a little bit. Our social media girl, Marissa, has it too. It's rough out there. Also brought to you by the amazing people over at Illegal Pete's. I can't remember the last time I've gone to the bar and one of us didn't roll in with an Illegal Pete's burrito between Jesse and Yaya, especially. They're burrito people. So you can get yourself down there. Happy hours are 3 to 6 p.m. at Illegal Pete's, where you can get their margaritas for a ridiculously good price. So go check that out. Also, their burritos are just amazing. Highly recommend you have their burritos and eat them. Absolutely delicious all the way around. Their queso, mwah, ridiculously good. Check them out. Get down to one. There's an Illegal Pete's literally like just a block or two from the bar, so you can hit them up.
Autoplay.
What even was it?
So was that Sarah McLachlan?
I don't know. I don't know what it was.
In the Arms of an Angel getting played back here?
It was one of those sad dog commercials that autoplayed on my phone. Yeah.
I'm Sarah McLachlan. Did you know 1 million dogs die every year? I don't know the actual commercial.
Every minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like what it feels like.
Jump over there. They're also hooking you up at Illegal Pete's. You spend $100 on gift cards, you get an extra $25 free. So it's a great holiday gift option through Illegal Pete's. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Darren Helm isn't going to have the roster impact of someone like a Lehkonen, a Nichushkin, or even an Erod, but is very likely going to bring some stability to that bottom 6 when he comes back. How important is that for the Avs right now? 1, and 2, whose spot is he taking?
This is the one where I really don't know. I really have no feel for what happens with Darren Helm. Like, for me, I think putting him next to Dryden Hunt on like an actual 4th line is where I would start him out. Especially at center where we saw him in the postseason. Start there.
Sure. But certainly, given that they sent Myers down already, seems like he's kind of already an odd man out, so a center position should be open. Granted, Erod helps fill that, but
right. I think the ultimate goal is to work him back into that line that he clicked with so well last year, playing in the middle between Cogliano and O'Connor. But again, that has been your big skating energy line for the last few weeks, and I just don't think it's fair to drop a guy in who hasn't played an NHL game in 6-7 months onto a line. It's like, hey, we need you to skate your ass off every shift, every minute. Get out there. So no, I'm with AJ. I think you start him on a fourth line with, whomever it is that makes up those wings there. Get him ramped back up, watch his minutes a bit. But eventually I think they want to work him back in between Cogliano and O'Connor and have that kind of be a go-to. And, while you're still dealing with injuries, keeps JT Compher in kind of a flex position for you. Can I change gears just a little bit here?
Yep.
Do either of you look at do you think as well as Mikko Rantanen has played now for the last 3 games at center, do you guys think Jared Bednar's going to get frisky with that at all and say, okay, well, shit, maybe we use Mikko Rantanen in between Lehkonen and Nichushkin? I don't know.
When?
Just moving forward, when guys get back, get healthy.
So, do I think that happens when McKinnon is healthy?
Yeah.
Not right away. I could see him talking himself into it when Landy is back, but wouldn't you rather just do it with Landy at that point?
I'm just saying just because Mikko's had a few good games there where he's really been impactful.
I just don't see that as anywhere near the first option. I think you're floating Lehkonen or Nichushkin down the lineup on the wings before you're thinking about doing that.
We've seen the way that McKinnon and Rantanen have elevated each other
for sure
so consistently over the last several years that for me, I guess I just have a really hard time believing that any solution is break that up.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the way, and you look in Boston and the way that Bergeron and Marchand have just kind of been stapled to each other for a decade.
Right.
Sometimes things just work, and at a really, really high level, because with Arturi Lehkonen, a guy that 2 years ago was toiling in Montreal's bottom 6, they are still one of the top 10 best lines in the NHL. And Gabe Landeskog, we know, there's no offense to Arturi Lehkonen. Gabe Landeskog is just a better player, and what he's done for that line as the defensive conscious of it, we've seen a little bit with Nichushkin too. Those guys bring that line to a different level, and Landy's been amazing there.
I honestly think it comes back to the same conversation we were having at the start of the year. Look, if you don't believe in Erod or Newhook to be your 2C, you're probably looking at going out and getting one at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and we saw with Erod, though, there were makings of him starting to earn
absolutely
an extended look at 2C
for sure.
Flanked by the good ones, flanked by a Nichushkin and a Lehkonen or a Landeskog, whatever that alignment would be with the wings. You've got such good two-way options there, because between all 3 of those guys, Lehkonen, Landeskog, and Nichushkin, you have 3 excellent defensive players.
Well, and part of what makes me think this way is that the Avs had such great success with that Landeskog, McKinnon, Nichushkin line last year in the postseason. But I also just kind of had the thought, because we were talking about their top line right now, and I just thought it's been a really fun combination. I thought it was a really fun combination last night, because you had 2 great defensive players, Lehkonen and Nichushkin, and Mikko is maybe for the first time, truly since he's been here, we have seen him kind of embrace being, the guy a little bit here. I've got to be the one to put up the points. I've got to be the one to pick up the production over the last couple games. Again, you're talking about 2 games here, but just thought it was an interesting thing to float out there.
It's definitely an interesting conversation. I just think there's too many other options besides Mikko there still to really see it being a thing.
Yeah, and I still think when you're talking about the trade deadline, not too long after Landeskog is back in the lineup, that they get basically 3 weeks to decide how important is this 2C position as a deadline priority. Because you could see where they could say, hey, Evan Rodriguez can do this job. We do feel good about it. But also, if we go and get Jonathan Toews or, just pick a 2C. I really don't want to get into that part. But pick a 2C. They go and get it, and it doesn't take away their center options. I mean, then you are having a third line conversation where now Evan Rodriguez is on your third line,
right,
next to an Alex Newhook or a JT Compher or whatever the alignment ends up being here, and that's where you're starting to say, okay, well, this is, again, you have found a way to rebuild that championship caliber depth, where
100%,
and where you're rolling out a third line that's just punching other third lines in the mouth every night. You're rolling out a fourth line, with Cogliano and
Helm
Comfort / Helm and O'Connor. 3 of those 4 guys are going to be going out there on your fourth line, and they have functioned poorly as a second line for a month and a half, 2 months.
But they aren't getting crushed, at least.
Yeah, but the thing is that they're not hurting you for an extended stretch, and they chip in offense occasionally. That for a fourth line, they're going to be significantly better. As a third or it'll probably really function as a third line come playoff time.
Yeah,
AJ, like just hearing you talk through all that, I really don't know if we have enough, and I know for a fact Avs fans haven't appreciated enough how over their heads that second line has played right now, and how well they've done,
how successful it's been, man.
Right,
it's the fact that they're not
effective. Yeah,
they're not producing offense, but you're also talking about they are taking on second line assignments almost every night and
holding them off the score sheet.
Exactly, and they are surviving. They're not letting other teams' depth kill them.
Right,
and that's where you have to look at it, and you're like. It's like the one failing of Colorado's top line this year is that defensively they haven't been any good. They've given up way too much, and you're like, look, you're getting away with all this bullshit in the rest of your lineup. Yeah. So it's and that's where if you do look at like a 2C option, like if you got really bold and you went and got a Ryan O'Reilly, and then you had a second line of Landeskog, O'Reilly, and Nichushkin.
Just a nightmare to play against.
You have a true shutdown line defensively, but one that can also generate the offense for you, right? Like, and I can go the other way and be nasty about it. And then you roll out that line that has functioned as their second line this year. You roll that thing out at the bottom of your lineup, and you've kind of accidentally rebuilt kind of the Tampa Bay model with what Anthony Cirelli has meant to that organization, and how important they are.
Where they just smother you with their depth.
Exactly. Where they it starts with what they don't give up, and then what they're able to give you on the other end almost becomes like bonus, because the guys at the top of the roster are scoring every single night. And that's and there's like, this is why I think the three of us have not been pressed about the standings.
Yeah.
Have not been too concerned about wherever the Avs kind of end up after all this shuffle, because once healthy, and like, yes, you do assume that the Avs get most of the way healthy at some point, right? My goodness, like they can really take flight once all the pieces come together, and what the healthy team looks like is just completely different.
It's great conversation. unfortunately still a month plus away. So I do want to reel this back into the next couple of weeks. Darren Helm coming into the lineup, your realistic guys looking on the outs here. Anton Bleed, Charles Hudon, Jean-Luc Foudy. Who's sticking? Who's going?
I mean, of those three, and Anton Bleed's not even in the conversation for me.
I agree. I think he's the easy one to send down.
Look, I'll say this, and then AJ, you can jump in and add if you want. I was told by a couple people who would definitely know. The Avs organization really likes what they've seen out of Foudy. Really likes what they've seen out of Foudy. So going based off what I know, if I'm having to pick one guy out of that list right now today, I'm going to say it's Foudy, because that's the one guy that I know internally that has exceeded their expectations.
Well, and like, what a shock, right? Like, you talk about stylistic fit here, and as much as it annoys me that Martin Kaut is like the fall guy here and it's like the first guy that they send back because he's got a quiet game or two here and there, you look at it and you're like, what's the big difference here between a guy like Martin Kaut and a guy like Jean-Luc Foudy? Is that Jean-Luc Foudy just naturally plays the way the Avs want to play. Of all the guys in Colorado's system, this is the thing that we have talked about his entire time since the second he was drafted, and Rudo and I were like high-fiving all over the place, is that Jean-Luc Foudy is an impeccable fit to play Avalanche hockey. If you asked him to go be a Dallas Star right now, he'd be a gross miscast in what Pete DeBoer wants to do. But to play the way that Jared Bednar wants the Avalanche to play, there has never been a prospect in the Avalanche system more well-equipped than Jean-Luc Foudy. Now, I've had questions about what he ultimately would become, like where his ceiling is, what his fit is. He's played all over the Eagles lineup in terms of role and on both wings and at center. He's done a little bit of everything. And I think that his success at the NHL level has been wildly overstated by a lot of people. People are, he's this much better, and he looks this great and that. He makes a ton of mistakes. But at the end of the day, you look at that guy and you're like, look, he's kind of a lightning bolt in your bottom six, because every single time he touches the puck, something's happening. And that is where he is separated from every single other call up, is that he for whatever reason, there's an it factor that you can't put your finger on and point to and explain. Something about Jean-Luc Foudy playing for this Avalanche team, it's just clicking. Yep. It's working. And that's one thing where you just say, look, Charles Hudon has been kind of fun, but that he's got NHL track record where you can look to and say there are significant defensive shortcomings in his game. But are they enough that they counteract what he's at least brought offensively? All right, well, he's had a lot of really high-end scoring chances and hadn't capitalized on any of them.
Yeah.
So that was
how do you kind of mix all that together? Because
that was what I said
between
yesterday.
Those two guys, I think that I just think that you have interesting conversations. I want to give it another week, and like the injury issues aren't going to stop, so they've got another week to sort that out. But for right now, I think what you're seeing is that Jean-Luc Foudy, I think, has made a lot of mistakes, and I think there are a lot of problems that I have with him. But regardless of the issues, there are so many things that are just natural fits for him with how the Avs play that you're like, you can see this guy fucking up a playoff series. That this guy, they roll into a first round series, or they get into a second round series against the Dallas Stars, and this is the guy that gives them their Kiviranta moment. That guy down the lineup that's just capable of being that like thunderbolt that changes the course of a series, that makes that kind of an impact.
Already
play.
Was that guy for the Eagles last year.
And yeah, he was. And it's just that's a guy that you look at and you're just like, I don't know that he's totally ready, but even with his hair on fire, he's finding a way to do things every single night, and you just can't ignore that.
So what I was going to say a minute ago was I made that same comment about Charles Houdon. It's like everyone's talking about how great he's generating all these chances. It's like, yeah, he's also not buried a bunch of grade A chances. But going back to Foudy, so we actually coming up here at 2:15, we will have a new podcast dropping. It drops every Monday. It's just a bonus sixth pod. We're not taking anything else away, but so that'll be coming to you guys here shortly, about 30 minutes. But Megan and I talked about on there. We have an interview with Andrew Cogliano, and he talks about relative to the young guys. He says, you know what? I'm paraphrasing. You know, obviously, it's the effort is a huge thing. The effort and the consistency. Are you showing up every day and giving 150%? Are you skating your ass off on every shift? Are you doing something to try to be involved on every play? And what he basically said is, look, the older guys like in the room, we notice that, and especially now you're on a championship team. Like, there's an expectation within that locker room that your effort is at a certain level every single day. And he said, look, we notice that. And if you're showing up every single day and putting in the kind of effort that is consistent with what we do in this room, we can live with the mistakes. Mistakes happen. Things happen out there. It's when you're showing up, you're not putting in the effort that maybe everyone else is, or you're taking a shift off here and there. That's when the mistakes become a problem. And that's where I think a guy like Foudy, because you're right, AJ, like his game has been far from perfect. But I think they like him internally because he's doing what's being asked and he's bringing a fairly consistent effort level to every single shift, every single practice. And then he does have the skill side to it. Like you said, he's just a good fit within the system. He plays with speed, all of that stuff. And so they're saying, look, we're fine to live with some of these young mistakes because he's doing a lot of the things that we're asking him to do, that we want him to do. And I like the Kivy Ranta comparison. Like, cool, can we keep this guy around long enough? Can we get him integrated to what we do enough that, yeah, near the end of the season, here's this weird chip you can play in your bottom six that has a bunch of offensive upside. So, yeah, this has turned into a long answer to your question, Rudo. Of if you're asking me to put money on it right now, to me, it's Foudy who sticks around.
Okay. To play devil's advocate a tiny bit, because I actually agree. I think it's probably Foudy, maybe Houdon. Those are two guys that I can see Bednar shying away from at times in his bottom six when he's looking for defense, consistent, don't screw me over hockey.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it in the past where he will shy away from some of those rookies that have a little bit of that inconsistency for a player like Anton Bleed or Jason Megna.
Yeah.
With that being said, I don't think Bednar has had a whole lot of prospects that would slot into the bottom six that have flashed the way Foudy has.
I mean, right now, you're trying to figure you're crystal balling it and you're looking down the road. Like, what you're talking about, Rudo, is a preference for Dryden Hunt.
Correct.
And I think that's the roadblock there, is that when everybody's healthy, Dryden Hunt still exists and is still
The 12th guy.
A guy they have to make a decision on,
Sure.
that what do they want to do with him? What's the plan? What's the role, et cetera, because we're seeing like he's a guy that, yeah, it was fun that he went out and he's gotten into a couple of fights and he's had some big hits and he's done some things, but you're talking about a guy that has scored one goal for the Avs.
I mean, we're talking about Udon not finishing grade A chances. Dryden Hunt has seen a lot fall to the wayside as well.
Well, and you're talking about a guy that is not consistently getting to double-digit minutes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, he got to Colorado and he hasn't built towards anything. He had 7 shifts yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of thing that you wonder, and like sometimes that just happens, right? Because Bednar is very much that kind of coach that goes with a feel where he's like, this guy doesn't have it tonight. This line is giving me a problem. I'm not playing this guy. Because we've seen Dryden Hunt have nights where he gets moved up in the lineup, where he has been a lot more of an impact guy. And his style of play, Hunt's style of play, is a lot more conducive to the postseason than Jean-Luc Foudy's is right now. Who Dryden Hunt is at his core, but you also know that Dryden Hunt's not doing shit for you on the offensive side of the puck. Like, you're comfortable with the idea that you're probably not getting any of that out of him. But where I think I'm concerned about Hunt is that the things that are supposed to be staples of his game are so inconsistent. The physical presence, like, he goes out and he's a guy that skates hard every night. And I don't think that's a concern. But the physical presence is hit and miss. No pun intended. Like, it's not, he's not out there. If there was one thing that you liked about Curtis McDermott at forward, it's that he would go hunt a guy on a forecheck. Yeah. That guy would get rid of the puck, and Curtis McDermott would attempt to put him into the third row. And like every time out, he would do that. And you knew what you were getting there out of Curtis McDermott as a forward. You knew that was going to be a thing that was happening. It's supposed to be part of Hunt's like package as a player, as part of his selling point. And it's just inconsistent. And the decisions that he makes with the puck, they're almost too simple. Like, it's almost like he's afraid to try to make a play because he knows he's supposed to be a skate in straight lines and hit people kind of player. But he hardly ever tries to do anything with the puck. He hardly ever does anything in which you would consider it playmaking or creative. It's almost too simple, where now you're starting to say it's too limited. There's a hard cap on what he can give you because he won't deviate. And when you won't deviate from that and at least try something offensively, and the selling points of his game are not consistent or are not super consistent, it really becomes a tough sell for me as a consistent presence in a lineup of a playoff team that takes itself seriously. Whereas Foudy's physicality and stuff, it may not be there. But again, you're talking about a guy that when he touches the puck, there's just an electricity.
Perfect example of this for Hunt. Despite a very strong 56% positive Corsi, he's been on the ice for 1 goal for and 6 against.
That fight was dope though, guys. So I don't think you're quite accounting for that enough.
Well, and you know that in a postseason, like, look, that whole sequence helped the Avs because he laid a big clean hit that turned into a power play for the Avalanche. Yeah. All of that is those are good things that you want out of depth guys. My problem is that he'll do that once every 4 games. The 3 games in between, we're not seeing him do anything.
No, I for the record, I was purely just being facetious.
And I know it was tongue in cheek, but it's true though. Like, that was a moment in that game that had the power play, had actual NHL caliber players on it in that game, could have changed the course of that game. It ultimately didn't matter because the Avs were just too overmatched that day. But in a game, if he makes that play tomorrow, and that's the kind of situation that results from it, Colorado's chances of winning are a lot more serious.
Well, I was going to say, because I wanted to build on, or just kind of co-sign what you were saying there about, like, that's a big hit on a big name player. And then not only did he like get in the fight and it's like, oh, he stuck up for himself. Like, no, he like straight beat the tires off Tomas Nosek. Like, that's one of those fights where people talk about.
Was that Nosek's first fight?
It sure looked like
it. It felt like it, right? Like, yeah, it was like watching Nichushkin's first fight. We were like, oh, he's not done this before.
The part of it we were laughing at, like, as we were waiting to go in the room after, was I've never seen someone engage a fight look so unprepared for a fight. Like, you went and tracked him down to start a fight, and then you got in the fight, and we're like, I don't know what to have. But
that was one where Nick Foligno pulled him aside and was like, "Let me take it, big fella. Like, we appreciate you."
Yeah. Let's
But
talk
I got
next practice
next.
about how that looks. But no, I mean, like AJ, like you are right. People talk, oh, you can't take fighting out of hockey. It's a part of the game. It changes the momentum. I don't think that is often the case. That is one of those fights where it's like, yeah, that could change a game.
Yeah.
Yep. Game changer for us, Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. Can't wait to drink some on the party bus, but also get it down at the bar, 8 different kinds on tap. You can get it at your local liquor store using the Breck Beer Locator online. When you go to breckbrew.com, they also have the nice list, giving away a bunch of different stuff for Christmas. Go check it out. Get yourself some free dope stuff. And of course, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. When you use code DNVR when you sign up there and you bet $5 with a new account on any NHL team to win their next game, you get $150 in free bets. I'm just saying, my pick of the week last week was take the Avs over the Blues, and it was a little spicy, but it hit. At the end of the day, the bet hit. So maybe listen to me, but probably don't. Go do something smarter than I'm capable of. Again, use the DNVR code when you sign up with DraftKings. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Very quickly here, did want to touch on the other news topic of the day with Englund getting sent down. Do you guys think this is an indication that one of the defensemen is close to getting back, or is this we're going to see Jacob McDonald get moved back to defense and actually play defense?
That's what I think it is.
You put out a defense with both Brad Hunt and Jacob McDonald, you get what you deserve.
No, Jared Bednar told us at the start of last week, or maybe at the very tail end of the week before that Josh Manson is still a hard month out. And this is another thing that we did talk about in the episode that is coming out here in about 15, 20 minutes. Bo and Byram, they are not claiming that it was a setback, but we've clearly seen some type of setback in his actual journey to getting back on the ice in a game. He was supposed
to go from skating to not skating is a setback. I don't care what they want to call it, but it just is.
Right. Yeah. So AJ saying it more bluntly than I was, but seriously, I mean, they are maintaining it was not a setback. He was on the ice. He was supposed to go from on the ice by himself to skating with Shauna Laird. He is just back to not skating. So take that however you want, I guess. So for me, from what we know, both with the Avs and what we're seeing on the ice, I imagine that this is at best Jacob McDonald sliding back to defense.
Or they're just saving money for the day.
Or they're just saving money for the day.
I did want to say it's very possible that these are just paper transactions.
That is my guess. Especially the Englund one. It's my guess that they're saving money.
Which I'm not exactly sure how the math adds up there right now with their
everything going on, man.
LTIR, it's just chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. I gave up trying to keep track of it because it got to the point where it was like they are in the weeds on some of this stuff. And I was just like, I'll just trust that they got this.
$35 million worth of players hurt. It's kind of just whatever happens at that point.
Are you guys to totally change directions here? But are you guys are you guys a little surprised the Avs didn't put in a claim on Eli Tolvanen?
I said I was a tiny bit surprised, but I just have to imagine it's the money.
Yeah, how many is it? Just 1 year on the deal?
So it's weird that, like, first of all, like, his development has been really fascinating because when he was drafted,
the hype was real.
Well, it was like he's just a goal scorer. He doesn't do anything else. He's not even much of a playmaker. He's just a really fast skater who can score goals for you. And then over the last few years in Nashville, he's developed into like
more well-rounded.
Like he's played in their depth and he's gotten better and he's developed more of a physical edge. He actually like gets involved defensively, and he still has goal scoring ability. But it's weird that his production on a per 60 basis has gone up and his ice time has gone down. And that is one where you're just like, John Hines just doesn't like this player.
Yep.
And I am so confused, but also like Seattle making that claim. Seattle went from a team that last year was like, they do a lot of decent things, they just can't score.
So
And they go out and they get well now, and they go out and to add to Jordan Eberle and Jaden Schwartz, they get Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky, who's like they can score goals. And now they got Tolvanen added into there, and you're like, okay, so they've just decided, all right, we're gonna swing the other way on this pendulum until it hurts us. Just living the extremes. So I do think there's really an interesting claim from Seattle. A little like I knew immediately that the money was going to be an issue for Colorado, but also like the difference between a Dryden Hunt and Eli Tolvanen.
If it wasn't for the money, you're taking that every day of the week. Right?
It's pretty significant, man.
Well,
like
were you guys actually surprised that he made it all the way to Seattle?
Yes, I was, because that's a guy that I really don't understand what like the San Jose's and the Anaheims.
It's part of why I never really even considered it for the Avs, because I was like, oh, the 10th team on that list will take him and it'll be whatever.
Well, and to be honest, like and I'm less familiar with everyone's cap situation off the top of my head, but even a team like St. Louis, where you're looking at the Blues and you're like, if they could have fit the number in under the cap, again, off the top of my head, don't know what their situation is, but Tolvanen was like that kind of guy where you're like, he would have really fit that kind of archetype for them that they have kind of loaded up on in the last couple of years, where these guys can play a little bit of offense but are not bad defensively. Also, that Nashville just felt the need to be like, we're good. Like, you've spent all these years working on this, working and developing, and you know him better than anybody, and you've just decided you just gave up on him.
What Elliot Friedman was saying this morning that he thought it was because I guess they've got a lot of defensive injuries and they're having to call a bunch of guys up and make room and all kinds of stuff, and that Tolvanen was just the odd man out. He also made mention, and this is just, I'm curious on your thoughts on this, given kind of what you were talking about his draft profile. He said that Elliot Friedman spoke with a GM last night who said they liked Tolvanen, but they thought he was maybe a little too one-dimensional.
I mean, and that's one where I'm like,
just not how you see it.
It just, at this point in his career, I can understand where you would say a guy is a little one-dimensional, but when you're talking about bottom six guys, who fucking is he?
Right.
Do you think Logan O'Connor has a lot of dimensions to his game? It doesn't stop him from being a quality NHL player.
Right.
Like, it's a weird criticism to levy at a guy that like a guy that lost a job. And a guy that lost a job to fucking Mark Jankowski. Like,
for the record, obviously they've got some LTIR space, but for all intents and purposes, St. Louis is sitting at 84.8 against the cap. So, I mean, they are right up against it.
Pretty tight, yeah.
They've got just over $1 million in available space, but that is including their LTIR.
So tough for them, for sure.
Yeah, and that's one where they also have a lot of forwards sitting on their roster that, like, I know that they've got a couple of extras on there, like Tyler Pitlick and Josh Lavo, that they could always move. But
true,
those guys, they've been bad enough this year that those guys have actually played roles for them.
Yeah. I do want to get this pod wrapped up here, as the At the Rink pod is about to drop on YouTube in a couple minutes here. So Any final thoughts on the Avs roster here before we get out of here?
We kind of glossed over it, but I'm sort of curious how Darren Helm not only comes back into the lineup, but like how he plays, where he fits. If that starts to be the beginning of Bednar going back to balancing his usage a little bit, instead of it being 2 lines and prayers, nightly prayers after those 2 lines, like, because that's really what it's been. And so Helm is kind of a guy that we haven't, like, everybody's understands what Darren Helm is and isn't at this point in his career, but it's such an interesting guy in the eye of a coach, where he's like, like exactly what this guy needs to help stabilize the bottom of his forward core, and it's like the start of that. And with Darren Helm, I just wonder, like,
what does it actually look like?
Yeah, and like the overall impact, and does he play well? Because you got to remember, like, this is a guy that wasn't very good last year, and then the postseason started, and he was an absolute holy terror.
Yeah.
Dope as hell, yeah.
Yeah, where you're like, he went from being like, he really wasn't very good last year.
Yep.
And then the postseason started, and he was like, oh my God, dude, this is the best 4th liner in the league. Like, he kicked ass in the postseason. So,
well, he was so good in the postseason that, like, the game winner in Game 6 against St. Louis, like, you weren't even all that surprised it was Darren Helm.
Yeah, I mean, you go back and you look at it, and he scored what, 2 goals in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2.
2, yeah. If not 3, it was at least 2.
And, like, that's a huge moment, and everybody was just like, yeah, Darren Helm, like,
he sniped the shit out of Andre Vasilevsky in Game 2 of the final. That's right. Just picked a corner on him.
Yeah, that was God, I don't even remember which goal that was, but that shit was hilarious.
That was like the 4th or 5th in that blowout.
That was the one, and that was the one where you were like,
yep, you took the words out of my mouth. As soon as that one went in, I looked at the person next to me. I was like, yeah, this is a rout. Like, this is only getting worse from here. You got Darren Helm picking corners from the top of the circles. Yeah. You're done.
Okay. On that note, we are going to wrap up the show today. Be sure to stick around on the YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Jesse and Megan's At the Rink Pod dropping in just a few minutes here. If you want a little, are we calling it insider info? I don't know. They got a bunch of interview topics and stuff. They talked to a bunch of Avs in there. So
it's going to be unlike anything that anybody else is making in the Avalanche community right now. So just tune in just for that.
It's very, and we mentioned this on the show, but like, AJ, we've been talking about this type of show now for the last year, being access driven. So every week you can expect a lot of audio from in the locker room, video from inside the locker room, talking to coach, one-on-one interviews, stuff that we're hearing around the rink. If we're getting little tidbits of info here and there, that pod is going to be where you hear a lot of that stuff. So yeah, it's like I just said, it's very unlike we think what anyone else is doing out there. So hope you guys enjoy it. It'll be every Monday. It'll have a written piece. That'll be some diehard content that'll come out on Sunday. That'll be loosely related to it. So yeah, it should be fun. First episode's dropping here in just a few minutes.
There you go. We love all of you. We'll be back tomorrow with the game. Until then, see you on the next one.